Welcome, everybody. Glad to see you turn out today on a very, very pretty day. We have Kayl Kite, who's 4 engineers, is going to speak to us in a moment. I'll introduce him in just a moment. But let's start first right here with Carty with his mouth tool. Introduce himself and tell us who you're with.
I am Kartik Patel. I work for the Relax Inn and Suites in Catawba. I'm just over there by the interstate. Me and my parents basically run it. We have like 5 employees. Seasonal business, of course, so we try to tailor a lot of our business to fishermen. But we've been there for 30 years. Hopefully we'll be there for another 30. Besides that, I think that's it.
Taylor.
Taylor Smith with the Edible Horizon store, and then the Core Fitness 24 Gym and Edible Mall.
John Outlaw with 3 Max and Sherman 93 stop.
Hold on, right there in just a moment. Bit of news. Mr. Outlaw is our newest member to the board. At the last board meeting, he was appointed to fill the unexpired term of Jeannie Woodall. So that actually starts the 1st of July. But you're welcome to attend the next couple of meetings, just to get your feet wet.
I'll do that.
No, actually, it starts right now, but she's gone. I'm mistaken. The elected ones will start the 1st of July. You're on there right now. You're appointed. Julie.
Julie Stout with Henry & Henry Lineman's on Highway 62.
Joanne Vogel with Regional Glass on 641 North.
And I'm Cindy Riley with WCCK Radio in Calvert City.
Debbie Krebs with Buchanan's Boards, Fairfield.
Jerry Aldrich, Travel Leaders.
Allison Van Hooser, Farmers Bank and Trust.
Kim Shoulders, Purpose Bank. Greta Barcar with the Herald Ledger and 221 Land of Lakes.
Jody Norwood with the Herald Ledger.
Bobby Faust, Herald Ledger.
We're glad to have you with us. And I will not forget this today. Right back there is
Jim Stein.
Our president, by the way. Bayview Partners. Poor Jim, I leave him out 90% of the time. All right, Kayl Kite, U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. Kayl's going to talk to us a little bit today about what the Corps is doing locally and their economic impact on the area and some of their programs, projects.
Yeah.
Great, close there.
Yeah, I appreciate y'all having me. And again, my name's Kayl Kite, and I've lived here in Catawba, well, Eddyville and Catawba since about 2001. I talked to Jim when he came in here. I was kind of his ranger when the house he had down there in 2001. And so I've been around a little while. Been with the Corps since 1998. As soon as I graduated college. I worked actually while I was in college for a little while, and then worked at Old Hickory Lake down around the Nashville metro area. I worked on Del Hollow Lake, kind of the central Kentucky and Tennessee, and then I moved up here in 2001. And so I want to just give you a little bit of, I guess, an update or a kind of a background of what the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers does, because I know you guys know that the Corps of Engineers operates Lake Barkley here locally, but the Corps is kind of it's a major player, federal player throughout the whole country and actually all over the world. And so I just kind of want to give you a background of that and kind of give you a little bit of education about what the Corps does and then what we do here locally. If y'all got any questions, just stop me mid-sentence and we'll try to answer those. So I'm the biologist here, so I deal a lot with the shoreline management plan, the boat docks, the limited wildlife habitat management that we get to do, and then mainly we deal with recreation, which is kind of what you guys see a lot of, and that's a big player on tourism and the economy for this local area. But we'll get into that a little bit. So the Corps is a major command of the United States Army, 33,000 employees. However, only about 600 to 700 of those are soldiers, or actually military. The rest of us are civilians. I'm a civilian, and I just work for the Army, which is part of the Department of Defense. And so the great majority are civilian employees. And we're organized in 9 divisions, 43 districts, the headquarters office. We've got districts and divisions overseas, so we're all over the world. Established in 1802, mainly as military, doing military fortifications. And actually, one of the first fortifications was a fort that's now where the Statue of Liberty is. That was kind of one of the first things the Corps did. And in 1824, they established the Corps of Engineers mainly as a civil works agency. It was our first civil works mission, was to open up the Mississippi and Ohio rivers for navigation, to get around, for commerce. And so actually right here, kind of in this local area, is kind of where we got started with the civil works mission. Some of the other things that we've done that a lot of people don't know, I didn't know until I came to work for the Corps, the Washington Monument, Lincoln Memorial, Panama Canal, Pentagon. We're responsible for all those. And we were actually the first manager of Yellowstone, the Corps of Engineers. So that's kind of a little interesting note. I don't know how well you can see that, but that's kind of a map of how we're spread out. This is, we're in the Great Lakes, Ohio River Division. Our division office is in Cincinnati, and then we're in the Nashville District Corps of Engineers. And so our district office is in Nashville. So that's kind of our local headquarters. And then Cincinnati is the division headquarters, and then obviously the national headquarters in Washington, D.C. We also have a division in the Middle East, Afghanistan, and then we have a district also in Europe, which is part of the North Atlantic Division. So some of the mission areas that we have, water resources, obviously, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about water resources and some of the specific things there, so I'll come back to that. Environment, 12,000 acres that the Corps has is environmentally sensitive. We got about 1% of all of the critical waterfowl habitat in the United States is on Corps property. So that's kind of a little interesting fact. Infrastructure, we are the Corps of Engineers. So we build a lot of stuff, and we assist local communities and other agencies with technical support and advice on building things. But we are the premier engineering organization really in the country when it comes to that. Homeland Security, we do a lot of things locally, like natural disasters and things that happen, like with Katrina and hurricanes that happen. We have teams that go out from different regional areas and go to these disasters. And we have certain teams. We have an ice team that their job is to bring ice to the local community of the disaster. And we have, one of our missions here is a blue roof team, which is basically, we contract out for big blue tarps to go on roofs after we've had a hurricane or a span of tornadoes that went through Alabama a few years ago. And we oversee that until they can get contractors in there to fix the roofs permanently. So that's kind of a aftermath of disasters that we do. And we usually we've had about 9,000 employees deployed to those different things nationally. And then war fighting, obviously the Corps supports the Army, and we've actually had 11,000 civilians in the last few years have been deployed to Iraq and Afghanistan, mainly in a rebuilding mission over there, rebuilding infrastructure, schools, office buildings, things that have been destroyed during the war. So the Water Resources Mission, that's the one I want to talk about a little bit because that kind of deals more with us here and still kind of on a national level. Navigation, you see there we got 25,000 miles of inland waterway channels. That includes the Cumberland, Tennessee River. You got the Intercoastal Waterway, you got the Mississippi, Ohio. Basically any river that's navigable, the Corps has some type of management on that waterway. So we're a big player in navigation. Flood damage reduction, that term used to be flood control, is what they used to say 20 years ago, but you all know flood control and flood prevention is not. It's flood damage reduction. And I don't have the stats on what we've done as far as reduction, but it is in the upper millions, probably billions of dollars of flood damage reduction that Corps projects have prevented just from being there. Recreation, I'll get into that a little bit more too. We provide about 30% of recreational visits to federal land. We are the #1 federal provider of outdoor recreation in the world. So we're above the National Park Service, the Bureau of Land Management. We are number one when it comes to that. Hydropower, again, these are all missions that the Corps does. We generate about $700 million in revenue last year from our hydropower generation nationally. We are the fourth largest electric utility in the United States, the Corps of Engineers. We're the number one hydroelectric power producer. So we're number one hydro and number four in electricity total. We do some shore protection. You think of shore protection, anybody go to the beach, Gulf Coast, East Myrtle Beach and Orange Beach, Gulf Coast. A lot of those beaches are protected and they're fortified and they bring sand into them. And so they say that 70% of vacations are at a beach. And so that's kind of a big economic thing, and that's something that the Corps does is shore protection. Dam safety, obviously we've got a lot of dams and we're kind of a leader in that as well. And then water supply, we supply water to about 10 million people throughout the country. So recreation, this kind of hits into kind of, I think, the tourism and the economics and businesses here locally. But this is nationally 370 million visits to 404 projects. And a project is basically a water resource project. It could be like Lake Barkley, or it could be a series of smaller lakes, and they call them one project. I think there's actually 450-something lakes or river projects in the country. Some of the infrastructure we have there, 90,000 campsites, 3,600 boat ramps, and nearly 600 commercial marinas, which there's 9 on Lake Barkley. We operate 12 million acres and 55,000 miles of shoreline. And something that's interesting, why we have so many visits and why we're the number one provider, is 90% of our projects are located within 50 miles of a major metro area, like Nashville, Atlanta, New York, Chicago. So we're close to where people are. Kind of economic impact here nationally, and $16 billion spent by visitors to projects. So when people come to Lake Barkley, they come for the water, and they may stay at one of our campgrounds, they may stay at a hotel, they may stay at a private campground, and they may go to the Oasis to eat or Willow Pond, and they'll buy gas here, and they'll go by to the cabin and buy fishing lures. And so all that is all that's figured in. I don't know how they figure it, but there's a formula where they figure the economic impact. It's about $16 billion when people come to Lake Projects to visit. 270,000 jobs. And then something we do a lot of is we have a lot of volunteers that volunteer for us throughout the country. And that economic impact there, $35 million in service, over 51,000 volunteers volunteering at least an hour. Some of them do a lot more, and some of them do a lot less. All right, so locally, getting down to where we are here, the Nashville district, that's kind of a map, and that's kind of hard to see, but the Cumberland River Basin there is in purple, and then the Tennessee River Basin is in green, and that is the Nashville district. It encompasses 7 states. And on the Tennessee River, we basically operate the navigational locks. We don't operate the hydropower plants. We don't have a lot of property in the Tennessee River Basin. But the Cumberland River Basin, we have 10 lake projects. 9 of those have hydropower units, and we have a lot of property, and we have navigational locks on the Cumberland River as well. It's 59,000 square miles is the watershed for our district here. And if something pops in your head, you got a question, just stop me. And then Lake Barkley we're the westernmost lake on the Cumberland River. So we're the last dam on the Cumberland River. And that kind of has a strategic, that plays a strategic role in what we do here, because any water that falls anywhere in the Cumberland River watershed passes by us here. And So when it comes to flooding and things, a lot of people get the impression that we can just turn the spigot off, anytime we want. But it doesn't just have to rain here for the lake to come up. I mean, it can rain in eastern Kentucky, and all of that water has to come by here. And it's all played out by how much water they let out to try to control that water. And that's above my pay grade, but I can answer some questions on it. It's pretty complicated how much water comes down the river. Yeah. Go ahead.
With all the floodgates open, how much water is going there?
Well,
Right now.
it varies. It varies depending on how high the river is already and the lake is. But I'll give you an example. 2010, when we had the Nashville flood, we had 2 of the gates were kind of damaged. So we had 8 gates open, almost to the max. I think they were open 23 or 24 feet. And we were 300,000 feet per second going through there. And that's about 2 million gallons a second coming through the dam. It would be more, but the river was already high. So if your river's high, you don't have as much head. So if the river's already low and you got a lot of water, a lot more can come through. But that's, so it's anywhere from 300 to 400,000, and that's the most we'd ever put through the dam in 2010. 300,000. That was a test for it. That was the max that it ever came through there.
That went rain 18 inches in Nashville.
In Nashville, yeah.
My question was, looking at your photograph here, and I've seen a lot of historical photographs that you posted on Facebook.
Right.
Is there a compilation of those somewhere that are accessible to the public?
Well, they're working on it, and we're putting on our Nashville District webpage. They've got a digital video library, and they're putting those on there. And I'm not sure if they've got it up to the public yet, but I'll find out.
I mean, those are very, very, very.
Yeah, we had some. We were kind of posting them on there so we could get some posts on our page, and I'll give you our Facebook page, by the way, and y'all come like us, because we like to get people on there. But that is going to be, if it's not up now, it will be up very soon, and I can get you the address to share. We'll post that on our Facebook page too. So, some of you guys may know Lake Barkley started in 1957, completed in 1966. It's about 2 miles long, if you count the earthen part of the dam. Barkley's 118 miles long, 1,000 miles of shoreline. And these are our primary missions. This is why Lake Barkley was authorized to be built. And it was originally called the Lower Cumberland Project. And Mike Looney, I'm filling in for Mike as the manager for the next few months. He's normally the manager here, and he always asks this question to everybody. I mean, you know where Barkley was named after Vice President Alvin Barkley, who was the vice president to who? Truman. Okay. Well, I'm glad y'all got that. A lot of people don't, but there's several people that did get it.
Who's the beat?
Huh?
Who's the beat? Who's the beat?
Who's the beat?
Who's the beat?
Right.
Barkley.
Alvin Barkley.
Alvin Barkley is the beat.
Yeah. So these are the missions why Lake Barkley was established in 1946. Rivers and Harbors Act is what authorized us to build Barkley. And navigation was the primary purpose, and then flood damage reduction, power generation. Recreation and fish and wildlife were kind of tacked on later, but the 3 main reasons were navigation, flood control, flood damage reduction, and hydropower. Talk a little bit about navigation. I've got a slide about Kentucky Lock too, because a lot of people like to ask that. Barges and other boats use this for means of transportation. Barkley Lock's 800 feet by 110 feet. Kentucky Lock is only 600 feet, the current lock. We're building a 1,200 foot lock there right now, but 57 foot deep, 37 million gallons of water. These are just kind of interesting facts that people tend to ask us sometimes, but you think about that, that's over 2 football fields long, 57 feet high. That's how much water it is. And when you're looking at the lock, it doesn't look that big when you're standing up there looking at it, but if you think 2 football fields, it's actually a little longer than that, counting the end zones and everything, but that's how it is. Primarily what goes through here is your rough commodities, rock, sand, coal, some grains, but that's primarily what comes through Barkley and Kentucky Lock. A little more information on why navigation is important. And if you guys have been on our open house tour, you've seen some of these slides, but basically one barge, if you're looking there, one barge equals 15 jumbo rail cars, which equals 60 semi-trucks. And so one tow, which is 15 barges, is about 900 semi-trucks. So if you see a 15 barge tow going through Kentucky Lock or down the Tennessee River, Ohio River, that's 900 trucks worth of material that's going down the river. And if you stack those trucks end to end, it's 36 miles of trucks. And a barge is about a tow is about a quarter mile long. That's how much material you get. So it's a quarter mile barge or 36 miles of trucks with 150 foot spacing between them. So it's kind of interesting. And then the efficiency, this is how many miles you can take 1 ton of cargo on 1 gallon of fuel. Semi-truck's 59 miles, rails 202 miles, and a barge is about 514 miles. So that's why navigation is important, and that's why the river commerce is a big deal. And Paducah actually is kind of a center hub for that, because that's where Ingram's headquarters is located, and it's a big hub. What that also does for emissions, you can see, truck, train, barge, your hydrocarbons are a lot more with a truck and a train than they are with your diesel engine towboats. So it's a lot better for the environment too, as far as moving large amounts of material. Flood damage reduction, some of the things that we do, technical support. We are a sandbag distributor, and we did that a lot back in 2010 and 11 with local counties. We would get them there, and then the county emergency management would come pick them up from us. And so we were a distributor, provide technical support for those, for building those. The water management and sharing information. We took a lot of heat in 2010, especially in Nashville, for allowing Opry Mills and all that to flood. And it's kind of one of those things, I use this analogy. They said, well, because the dams were there and things flooded, and we took a little heat here at Barkley too, because we had some flooding there in Grand Rivers, and why are you letting so much water out of Barkley Dam? And the thing about Barkley and Kentucky is we have a direct effect on the Ohio and Mississippi River. And so we had to be letting water out here, even though some people got flooded, to relieve some pressure in Nashville. Because it's kind of like an analogy of having a bathtub, and you've got a pin-sized hole in it, and it's already full, and you're filling it with a 5-gallon bucket, and you're trying to get the water out of the pin-sized hole. That's what it's like. Even though the dams are letting all they can out, but you can only let out so much. And if the dams weren't there, the flooding would have been a lot worse in a lot of other places. But that kind of gets pushed back sometimes. I kind of mentioned some of this: the largest producer of hydroelectric power and the 4th largest producer of electric power. Our power here is marketed through the Southeastern Power Association, and it goes to Big Rivers and TVA, and then it's sold. And that's why our power rates really in this area are some of the cheapest anywhere. And some things about hydroelectric power: it's renewable. As long as we have water in the lake, we can keep producing hydroelectric power, and it's very efficient because it converts 90% of the energy of that water. Just all it is falling water, falling on a turbine. And 90% of that energy is converted to electricity. And so it's very efficient. It's clean. There's no hydrocarbons. There's no emissions because it's basically just turning the wheel and it's a magnet. And that's what hydroelectric power does. And it's very reliable. Now, we've had some units down at Barkley here in the last couple of years. We had a fire over there. But those units are going on 60 years old now, and it's all original equipment. And there's plans in effect right now to get money from TVA and possibly from the Southeastern Power Administration to do rebuilds on those generators in the powerhouse. So that's going. But just the fact of the matter is that equipment was designed. Other than some relays that we've changed out with some new relays, all that equipment was designed back in the 50s and 60s, and just the maintenance of it is we've kept it up and kept it going. And generally, we've had a 97% at Barkley Dam, 97% availability rate at Barkley up until the last few years. And that's another thing about it; it's flexible. That's generally what we do at Barkley. We provide peak power, and so when they call us, TVA and SEPA, they're working on the grid. You can't store electricity. It's when you put it out there, it's being used, and so we provide peak power. It's flexible. We can turn on quickly, and we can get our power on the grid, and then we can come off quickly. So in the afternoons, in the summer, in July, in the early mornings, afternoons, that's when we generate heavy. We just kick it on, provide that peak power, and then we let it back off. Obviously, the greatest power producer in the country is your coal-fired steam plants. I mean, they produce vast amounts of power, and then nuclear power, they can produce vast amounts of power, but there's just not as much. There's not as much of them. Anybody got any questions about that? Recreation, some of the last numbers we have are 2012 because we're redoing how we count our visitors, and they've been modernizing that, and so 12 was some of the last numbers we had. Barkley, I told you 370 million visits nationwide. Barkley had 3.2 million visits nationwide. We're the 17th most visited lake in the United States. And so, you know, really this area benefits from Barkley and Kentucky right next to each other. I mean, having these two bodies of water side by side, it's more water really than anywhere else in the United States together. We're the second biggest lake in the district behind Wolf Creek or Lake Cumberland. But it's been down so low because of the problems they've had with the dam seeping. Have y'all heard anything about that? And they have raised it back up now. They got that construction all done, and so we're back to being the second largest lake in the district now. We were the largest for the longest time.
So how far does Barkley Lake, where does Barkley Lake terminate?
Well, the 118 miles is basically terminates at Cheatham Dam in Tennessee. Cheatham Dam, yeah, past Clarksville, there in Ashland City. And that's how we measure our shoreline miles, 1,000 miles. That's down both sides and all the creeks.
So, then how do you compare Cumberland and Barkley? With shoreline miles or square miles of water? How do you
That was actually the acres of water on the size there. And Barkley, we're at 50, I think it's 59,000 acres of water. I can't remember what Cumberland is, but it's a little bit more than that when they got it. Maybe when they got it full, but not much more. Yeah, they're real close. Yeah. Economic impact there. This is the local economy, 69.3 million. That was in 2012. That's out of the 16 billion that's nationally, and so you know the local economy here from down in Bumpus Mills and Dover up to Grand Rivers. That's what's calculated, and that's a formula that they use based on visits and visitor spending, how much money a visitor spends when they come to fish on the lake or go swimming or just to visit.
Do they get it subdivided, like, for instance, could they say how much of that income or that economy boost is coming from fishing?
or a fishing tournament? or
I
fishing-
think, well, I know they break out the visits, like I said, they're modernizing those formulas right now, and they do have it broken out by fishing visits and hunting visits and maybe like sightseeing visits, and some of that information is broken out. I don't have that with me today, but, like I said, they haven't done any surveys for several years, and that's what they're doing now, and revising all that, so we can have a little better numbers. The net revenues from our areas were about 170,000. That's mainly our campgrounds like Canal, Eureka, Curtin Creek. This is some of the programs that we have that are in recreation. Of course, our campgrounds, volunteers, picnic areas. Swimming beaches. Environmental education and water safety, you know, that's something that is a big deal right now in the district for us. More water safety, that's gotten to be a big issue, and so we do a lot of, if you boat on Barkley, you probably had us stop you at some point and just talk to you, ask you if you got all your life jackets, all your equipment, and just telling you to be safe. And so that's a big emphasis for us, is to prevent drownings the best that we can. You know, just because you talk to somebody doesn't mean they're not going to do something crazy, but that's kind of our emphasis. So we go to a lot of schools, we go to a lot of safety days that the counties have. You know, Lyon County Day of Play, Tree County Day of Play. Any chance we get to kind of interact, we do those things. And then shoreline management, that's another thing that we do. We had about 30,000 contacts last year in water safety. That's individual contacts where we actually spoke to those people and they heard us, not just dissemination of material. The shoreline management plan, you know, that's the boat docks, private boat docks on the lake, and we try to balance those uses with protecting the shoreline. And so we do allow docks in several areas around the lake, and there's certain limits, size limits and things that you can do on the lake, and we manage all that with 5 or 6 rangers there. So that's kind of a big workload for us during the off season. During the recreation season, we spend a lot of time.
We will occasionally get a call at the chamber wanting to know who to contact about the boat docks.
Right.
On Barkley Lake. So who do they call?
Just call our office.
And how are you listed? How would they find you?
And they can look up, I think it's in the phone book, I think it's just Army Corps of Engineers or Lake Barkley Corps of Engineers, or they can just go on the web and type in Lake Barkley Corps of Engineers, and it'll come up. And I can give you a card too, and some information in this PowerPoint presentation.
But in a couple of years, we've had 2 or 3 calls, but, you know,
Yeah.
people do ask.
Yeah. Yeah, they just call us, tell us where they live, and we get in contact with the right ranger. We have different rangers for different areas of the lake. Fish and wildlife, this is some of the areas that we have. Right bank, we have a native grass area. We have one in Dover, Bear Creek. The duck pond area, Kentucky Fish and Wildlife has, and then Cross Creek is down in Tennessee, that's U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. That's another mission that we do. Kind of more on a limited basis, but we do get involved with that a little bit. And then kind of some of the miscellaneous things here I just wanted to mention and throw a few things out to you guys for discussion if you got any questions. Open house tours, 3rd Saturday in June, July, and August. So we're going to be having those again this year. Has anybody been on one of those?
I have a question though. What is the age limit on those tours?
There's really no age limit. I mean,
If a family with children could
yeah,
go?
you can bring children. Yeah. And what we do on those tours, we're still kind of limited on what we can do in the powerhouse, but we do take people into the powerhouse, and you can kind of see the generator deck and kind of get an interpretive tour of what a little more in depth than what I told you today about what hydropower is. And then we go to the lock and kind of get an interpretation of kind of how the lock works and what we do there. And some of that information you saw, you can see during the tour. And also, we talk a little bit about the recreation part and the natural resources part of the lake.
What are the hours?
Yeah.
The hours, I think we're going to have a 9 o'clock and an 11 o'clock tour on that third Saturday in those 3 months.
What do you need reservation?
You have to call, you have to go online and fill out the application to come to do that. Because there is a background check that they run on everybody, so you have to put your driver's license number on there. But I think we can do about 26 or 30 per tour, so about 60 each of those days. Last year it was down a little bit. The first year we did it was pretty full the whole time because the dam had been closed for so many years. But we've been doing these now. This is the 3rd year. And then Lock, now Barkley Lock is actually opened back up to the public from Memorial Day to Labor Day. So you can go in there, I think it's 8 to 4:30 or 8 to 5, and you can drive right up in the parking lot, and you can go over to the wall and look over if there's any boats there. So Barkley Lock is open.
What do you do for security? Are there security measures in place?
Yeah, of course there's gates around everything now, and when we opened up the lock to the public, they built some additional fence around the maintenance facility and around the office there. So the public can get into the parking lot and then over to the wall. And there's some interpretive panels there that they can read. So it's kind of like just a self-guided, you can watch the boats.
But they can't get into the...
They can't get in the building, basically just the parking lot, and you can get up to the wall. Now during the tours, of course we have a ranger there, and we kind of do a little interpretation about the features on the lock and what it does and what kind of material comes through there, how much. And,
No, I've done that.
Yeah.
Is that with the open house that goes inside the...
no, that's basically the same thing. Yeah. The open house, we go to on the lock, we look in the chamber and do some interpretation, and we go in the powerhouse, but we can't go down to the control room or down on the lower decks, mainly because of safety reasons. It's a little bit security, but it's also a little bit of safety because you have to go downstairs or an elevator, and the elevators can only carry so many people. And like I said, they had a fire in there a few years ago. And what happens? They have it's a CO2 system, and it's a CO2 dump that basically takes all the oxygen out to extinguish the fire. And so when that happens, everybody has to get out of the lower levels. You've got about 5 minutes to do that, and so we can't take groups down the stairs because they're not very wide, and so that's why we can't go down in between with larger groups. This water safety t-shirts, I wanted to throw this out just because it's the chamber. I talked a year or two ago with the Tourism Commission, and just a way of partnering. And I got partner opportunities here with the Corps. And you mentioned being a member of the chamber. I never really thought of that. I don't know if we can pay to do that or not. I'm going to check on it. And but these water safety t-shirts, we had an idea of just getting local businesses to donate or partner for some advertising on maybe a t-shirt. If each business gave $50 or $100 and had their name on the t-shirt along with the Corps logo and the water safety message, we could get several hundred of those printed, and they could be used to hand out at the business, and then we could hand them out when we're on the lake doing boat checks and on the beach, and somebody's wearing their life jacket or somebody's doing something safe. We can hand those things out. And so I kind of wanted to throw that out to you. And we had worked with the Tourist Commission. They were going to do that, and then it kind of fell through and never happened. But just to kind of do a partnership thing there, we could get that. So I'll throw that out there. If anybody's interested in that and doing any of these partnerships, they can call me in my office. Fringe group. Some of the lakes have a fringe group, which is basically a volunteer group, for the lake that helps organize, maybe lake shore cleanups or organize things like the t-shirts or brochures and things, advertisement. We don't have one here at Barkley. We've never really had anybody approach us that was interested enough to try to head that up. So I'm just throwing that out because you guys are probably some of the people that would know how to get that started or who will be. There's other partnership opportunities. We partnership with the City of Catawba and the Tourist Commission doing things. They've given money to build certain things, and in Old Catawba Rec Area, they're doing the amphitheater there right now. So that's going to be a good thing. And then volunteer opportunities. We're always looking for volunteers to help. We have a work week in the spring and the fall to help with maintenance on campgrounds. And we're needing park attendants right now at Bumpus Mills Campground in Tennessee. If you know anybody who's interested in staying in their camper in a campground for the summer, getting a free campsite, and then maybe that may even be a little bit of a paid job, because we're looking for somebody down there kind of desperately. So if you know any couples that might want to do that, point them our way. We contract those out at most of our campgrounds, and we didn't have anybody bid on that one, actually. So we're looking for that. And this is on Kentucky Dam. I want to throw this out, kind of an update on what's going on over there. And you guys might have seen the news and some of the things that are happening, but basically they got this coffer dam completed. They moved, before they started on the lock, they had to move these transportation or communication towers. They had to move those and build some more. And then of course they moved the highway down off of the dam. So all that's done. Right now they're working on the upstream portion of the lock, which that's where the lock is going to sit. They're working on these upstream monolith. The monolith is just big chunks of concrete that make the walls. And that contract is for $97 million, and that's to build nine out of the 61 monoliths that'll make the entire Kentucky lock. Now that's not counting any electrical equipment, mechanical equipment, doors, but that's basically the walls of the lock, which is the major construction.
Are they getting any money now from the Inland Waterways Trust Fund?
Well, they I don't have updated figures for what they're getting this year, but they have gotten some. We didn't get any money in the president's budget for 15, but that $97 million contract is awarded. They're estimating the total cost of this to be about $857 million for the entire lock project. And it's estimated to be completed in 2023 with funding. As long as we get funding, yeah. Because we didn't get any funding this year to start any new contracts. And so they're kind of finishing up. They can't start another contract until we get the funding in place. And so that's kind of where we are. Hopefully when Olmsted gets completed, they'll shift more money to Kentucky Lock to get that finished.
Is Olmsted still getting all the money?
They were still getting a lot of the funding, yeah. And this is it's almost 50-50, Inland Waterway Trust Fund and core funds, but the figures I looked at was a little bit more was federal dollars instead of the Inland Waterway Trust. I think it was $450 million and $380 million was the divide between the two. So, but yeah, we'll hope we get funding, and if, because that creates about a 3 to 7 hour delay going through Kentucky Lock, and those 15 bars toes. And so this 1,200 foot lock will lower those delays down to less than an hour. So, and every time, it costs the river transportation industry a lot of money when they're sitting there not doing anything, not moving. All right, there's our website. This is for Lake Barkley. Of course, if you take off this last part, locations, lakes, Lake Barkley, that's the National District website right to the mill. And there's our Facebook page, and that might be kind of low, but that's our phone number. We're in the Visitor Center, just on the west side of Barkley Lock, up on the hill. And so, yeah, if anybody's got any questions, feel free to give me a call or stop by there. And we'd be happy to talk and discuss any ideas, especially some of those things I had on there on the miscellaneous notes. One more item. the Lake Barkley Master Plan, which is kind of the overarching plan about how our lands are gonna be managed, our rec areas and our, you know, what other lands we have. That's gonna be reviewed, hopefully this year. We'll have some public meetings on that coming up in the next, hopefully in the next 4 to 5 to 6 months. We're getting that underway. That allocates what our land is classified for, whether it's recreation or vegetative management, or if it's just project operations. And then it kind of spells out some of these special topics that we talked about partnerships and fish and wildlife and other things. So that's going to be coming up probably in the late summer to early fall. We'll be having some meetings on that.
How much does public influence matter in those meetings?
You know, it's taken into consideration. I mean, we had our shoreline management plan here last year, and we had several comments about different areas, but mainly it was the Tennessee portion. We had more comments about it. But it's definitely taken into consideration. It's highly sought after. And we will also, before we have public meetings, we'll have stakeholder meetings with the city, like the city officials and the county officials and some of the agencies, the state agencies, and probably Kentucky Western Waterland, and maybe the Chamber and Tourism Commission will be invited to those stakeholder meetings. We try to get about no more than about 15 or 16 individuals to kind of look at it first, give us some ideas and things so we can kind of come up with a basic draft that we can have for the public to review. So, anybody got any other questions?
So who feeds the kitties down there?
Feeds the kitties. Oh, at the dam? I don't know, but I wish you'd come take them.
I stumbled across them when all the pelicans came. I was like,
Yeah.
oh, I gotta drive down there. And I'm like, where's all these cats coming from?
Oh, man, I
So
tell
then I
you.
ran to the dollar store and bought cat food. Oh,
Yeah, it's somebody they put cardboard boxes
I know,
down
I
there and
saw
blankets, and we got rid of all that stuff. But I don't know. We try to get rid of the cats, but you can't get rid of the
You can't
cats if
keep the
people are
cats.
feeding them. So if y'all need a cat, don't get one. So yeah, that's like the cat house, cat alley down there they call it. So, yes, ma'am.
The water level of Lake Barkley and leaving it at a higher rate or a higher level longer in the season, why do they start letting it out in like July instead of waiting until fall?
Well,
lowering it?
I'll give you the shortened version, because
Okay.
we get that question a lot, and there's a lot of things that go into it. But when the lake was originally designed, they set a guide curve for how they were going to manage the water levels. And originally, it was mid-June was when the lake was going to start down. And they changed that in, I think, the late 70s, early 80s, and they moved it to July 1st, moved it back 2 weeks. And now, kind of unofficially, we wait until about the 5th or 6th of July before we start creeping it down. There's a lot of issues go into it with increased need for hydroelectric power. Like I said, the peak power in July in the afternoons. And so July and August, September, that's when we generate more power. So we're running pretty much all the water we can run through the generator we're running. And a lot of times there's less water in the lake because that's the driest part of the year. So that just contributes to it coming down some. Water quality below the dam, if we don't let enough water out, then the oxygen levels drop when we get fish kills. There's issues with erosion on the shoreline. And then there's fish and wildlife issues as well. Getting water off of mud flats early enough in August, September so that vegetation can grow, provides habitat for waterfowl, and then provides habitat for fish in the spring when the lake comes back up. And there's a couple other factors. And this was looked at a few years ago. Whitfield, his office got involved, and we did a temporary, I think 1 year we tried it until July 15th, which was about 2 weeks later. and they did an environmental assessment and determined that that wasn't, we didn't need to do that again because of the impacts they saw. And kind of where it is now, the Corps' opinion is we're just going to go with what we have to July 5th because of all the factors that go into it. In order to change it, to make that an official change, an environmental impact statement would have to be done, and that's a pretty big study. You're talking, you know, a couple $1 million to do that study because it doesn't just look at Barkley and from the dam to the tailwater and from into Smithland, but actually they have to kind of look at what's going on, how that's going to affect water levels and possible flooding on the Ohio and the Mississippi and even the upper Mississippi and even the lower Mississippi. And so all of that kind of has to be looked at. And there hasn't been any funding set aside to do any of that study now. So that's kind of where we are. So usually by Labor Day, we're about 2.5 feet below where we are now. Well, we're up a little higher now, we're below summer pool. So it's a gradual drop off until about December the 1st when we hit winter pool. 359 is, normal summer pool.
But your elevation, or your control elevation, is pretty much the same to Kentucky Lake too.
It is, and that's why they operate both of them together. And that complicates
So you
things.
can put all this
a little
on
more.
TVA if you want.
Well, we could, but TVA did a study too. They were getting the same pressure we were, and we were kind of a partner on their study, and they determined that they didn't want to raise their levels either. And so whatever we do affects them, whatever they do affects us, and that also affects the water levels here. I said we're the last lake on the Cumberland River, so all the water coming from the Cumberland River is coming through here. Kentucky Lake's the last lake on the Tennessee River, so every drop of water that falls in that watershed is coming through here. So we get the brunt of everything, and we do have to manage them. They stay within a foot of each other to prevent scouring in the canal, and so barges can still get through there. Because if they get more than a foot difference, the current through the canal gets pretty swift, and it scours the shoreline, and it's tough for barges to navigate through there.
Any more questions for Kayl?
I'll be around for a minute too if y'all got something.
Thank you very much.